Well, welcome everybody. Welcome everyone who attended here on campus, and welcome everyone who is watching through the live stream as well. My name is Jason Hanna. I am the Executive Chef and Program Manager for Commercial Cookery here at William Blue. Have you all had a good day so far? Yes. So we got through the hygiene, we got through the safety, we did the introduction, and now we've got the fun stuff. Cookery, yeah? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at a couple of units that you guys have been doing at college or at school as well. So we're going to be looking at using basic methods of cookery. Does everyone remember some of their basic methods of cookery? Can you name some? Broiling, that's a good one. Baking, braising, stewing. And we've got two types really when we look at it, don't we? We have wet methods of cookery and we have dry methods of cookery. And when we're answering those questions for our HSC exam, that's how we're going to start. We're going to start with boiling is a wet method of cookery, baking is a dry method of cookery, and then you will attach whether it has a temperature control to it or whether or not it actually is done in the oven without the addition of fat as well, which would be baking. And then embedded inside the wet and the dry method of cookery, we have what else? Fast and slow. Yes? Fast and slow. So, after we do basic methods of cookery, we are going to be looking at kitchen equipment, their use, and basically kitchen hygiene and how to break that down as well. Okay, so we get to do the fun stuff. So let's start off with basic methods of cookery wet. So we have boiling. What else do we have? Poaching. Blanching. Blanching's a very good one. Can anyone tell me what blanching is? When you heat it quickly, plunge the food is a good one. What do we have to do after we blanch? Refresh. Yes, how do we refresh? Into ice water. These girls are on it. So, let's start with our boiling. How do we define boiling? Boiling is a wet method of cookery whereby food is fully submerged into liquid. It doesn't necessarily have to be water, does it? What else can it be? Court bouillon, very good. Oil, do we boil in oil or do we deep fry in fat? We can do stock, it can be liquid. So your answer when it comes to the HSC will be boiling is a wet method of cookery whereby food is fully submerged into liquid at what temperature? 100 degrees. So we know that boiling is 100 degrees. Can we go above 100 degrees? We can. Well, boiling being the maximum 100, everything else comes down from that as well, yes? What do we boil? We boil water, but what do we boil inside the water? Eggs. Everyone says eggs, yeah? I love boiled eggs. What else do we boil? Boil potatoes? Boil vegetables? Do we know the rule of thumb when it comes to boiling vegetables? Everything grown in the ground. Generally, we bring up to the boil with a cold water start. Everything grown above the ground goes into boiling salted water, and we generally refresh and we blanch that way as well. It's always a really good rule of thumb. So, we're all across boiling, yes? 100 degrees, wet method of cookery, where food is fully submerged into the liquid. Next one of my favorites, poaching. What is poaching? Poaching, again, another wet method of cookery, whereby food is fully submerged. However, the water is not rapidly moving on the surface. It is gently rolling at about 93 to 95 degrees. Why do we poach? What do we poach? Chicken, eggs. What else? Fish, yeah? So generally those softer, gentler items. Is that right? Yeah, so when we're poaching, what we're trying to make sure that we don't do is that we don't break up the product as well. That's very, very important too, yeah? What are some other things that we can poach? Think of yummy stuff. Hair, I love poached pear. What do we poach pears in? Red wine with a little addition of some sugar, a little bit of cinnamon, some star anise, a little bit of vanilla in there. Oh, I'm getting hungry just thinking about it. So poaching, okay, very, very important method of cookery as well. And we can poach everything from savoury all the way through to sweet. Do we have any other interesting poaching items that you've done before? A cartouche? Cartouche, we put the cartouche on top of the poached pear when we're poaching it, yes. What do you poach at school? What have you done? Poached pears, anything else? Poached chicken? Rhubarb, ooh, poached rhubarb, yum. I love rhubarb. Okay, so boiling, poaching, both wet methods of cookery. The next one, I love this one because I love wontons, yeah? I love dim sum, okay? So steaming is one of my favorite methods of cookery as well. However, we don't actually submerge anything into liquid for steaming, do we? What do? Put the basket on top and just go for it? Above boiling liquid, that's correct. And what cooks it? Steam, the vapors, yes? So what do we steam apart from dumplings, wontons? We steam vegetables? What was that? Buns? Steam buns, steam fish, yeah. That's probably the original, yeah? Steam fish. Now why do we steam instead of boiling or poaching? Think of what we were doing with the poaching as well. What are we trying to do? Yeah, keeping its integrity. Wow. That's not a word that I've attributed to steaming before, but however, yes. We want to be delicate, don't we? Very, very important that we're delicate with our steaming as well, okay? So again, we're not attacking, you know, the enzymes, we're not breaking it down in terms of that as well. Anything else that we can steam? Ooh, steamed pudding, of course. Christmas pudding. Or we could also do sticky date pudding, sticky fig pudding. I love all of that, yeah? So again, attributing different methods of cookery to both savoury and sweet is very important. Ooh, braising. Now I remember I did this a couple of years ago when we were at North Point, and braising was one of the questions that was in the HSC. And the reason why was because there's two components of cooking or methods of cookery within braising, isn't there? Does anyone know what they are? For a pair of sunglasses, William Blue style. What are the two methods of cookery inside braising? Slow cooking, close. Anyone? Stewing and roasting. It's kind of half a mark. Stewing and roasting. Okay, so we braise. Why do we braise? To get flavour. So what do we braise? Meat. We generally braise, and this is the kind of the difference between, braising and stewing. Braising is generally large joints of meat, okay, done in the oven. All right, so 2/3 submerged into a stew, 1/3 into a roast, covered as well. And what would that be? Would it be a quick method of cookery or a slow method of cookery? Slow, because what are we trying to do? Extract that flavour. So what are some of the beautiful things we get to braise? I love braising. I love winter. When it comes to winter, I love that braising. So what do you do in braising? You know, what kind of product do we braise? These guys over here are a bit quiet. Throw out some answers. Okay, maybe not. What do we braise? Beef. We do braise beef, but what? Shanks, yeah. So we're going from that primary product where we cook a steak, we've got that beautiful, you know, fillet, or we've got, you know, a nice Scotch fillet or anything like that in terms of a steak. When we braise, we're braising that secondary cut of meat. So we're taking the time to extract that flavour. So we braise things like lamb shanks. What else do we braise? Offcuts. What's the most famous veal braise? Comes from the shin. Ossobuco. Ooh, I love ossobuco, yeah? So we braise that secondary cut of meat as well. And what do we add to the braise to get flavour? Stock, we can add wine. What else can we add? Vegetables, yeah, put some nice fennel in there. You're going to put your hard herbs in as well, okay? Spices we can put in too, yeah, exactly. I love braising, yeah? So generally speaking, when you're talking about braising and the definition of braising and the difference between braising and stewing, braising is generally large joints of meat done in the oven, whereas stewing would be small pieces of meat done on top of the stove in liquid. Make sense? Yeah? So extracting that, okay, stewing, we all know what a stew is. Does anyone know the French term for stewing? French term for stewing? No? I think I've forgotten as well, yeah? I will remember. A ragout, yeah? Nice ragout. So, stewing, classified as a wet method of cookery, where food cut into pieces, cooked on top of the stove, okay? And again, fully submerged as well. So, give me some examples of a stew. And it doesn't have to be a stew as such. It can also be, you know, a different country style. A bouillabaisse? Bouillabaisse is like a fish soup stew, one of my favorites as well. What else? Would a curry be called a stew? A curry? Would we classify curry as stew? I think so, yeah, because we're still cooking it, you know, a chicken on top of the stove in liquid. The liquid this time wouldn't be stock, but it would be more that, you know, curry paste with your nice coconut milk as well. So, both served together. What do we serve stews with? Rice, standard answer. Give me something a little bit more interesting. Potato, yes. Couscous, yum. Now we're getting somewhere. And that's the beauty about what we get to do. You know, our kitchen operations, our commercial cookery, we get to match those great flavours up. We don't have to do the same every time, do we? We can always change it up as well, which is why us chefs are like so creative. We love doing that, do you know what I mean? And it's really important that, you know, we get to learn all our basic methods of cookery so that we can start to take that to the next level as well, when we get to play with flavours and spices. So, what do we have so far? We had boiling, poaching, steaming, braising, stewing. Anything else? What other wet methods of cookery? We've got blanching. Blanching's a type of boiling, really, isn't it? What about deep frying? Would you classify deep frying as a wet method of cookery? Yeah, of course. But what do we do when we deep fry? We generally coat our ingredients with something, don't we? We coat them with a batter, okay? So that when we drop it into the oil, what's happening inside? It's protecting, yeah. But what's the other method of cookery that's going in there? Browning? Well, we're crusting the outside, but what are we doing on the inside? Someone said it over here. Steaming, of course, we're steaming. So that fish, that delicate fish which has been dropped into batter, we get that beautiful crust and crunch on the outside, and then inside, you know, we're actually treating that fish with nice steam, keeping it nice and delicate as well. Any other wet methods of cookery that jump out? No? Do I have any more? I don't either. All right, so. Microwaving could be wet or dry. Interestingly, we actually don't have any microwaves in our kitchens at William Blue. But microwaving is a method of cookery as well. And yes, you can use that as a wet and a dry method of cookery too. My wife, she loves the microwave. Absolutely loves the microwave, yeah. Only because she orders a lot of food, you know, on the phone, because she doesn't know how to cook herself, all right? So anyway, she likes the microwave. Now, wet methods of cookery over, we're going to go to dry methods of cookery, all right? Can we name some dry methods of cookery over here on the right-hand side? I've helped you out by putting one up there. Shallow frying, yes. Roasting, baking. What's the difference between roasting and baking? Excellent. Roasting uses fat, whereas bacon is done in the oven without the addition of fat as well, okay? So, what do we roast? Meats. What does Mum roast on the weekend? Lamb, chicken, pork. What about vegetables? We can roast vegetables, can't we? Yeah? What else can we roast? These guys are enthused. Anything we want, we can roast fish, can't we? Yeah? Love roast fish. Okay, so our definition. This is a dry method of cookery where food is cooked with dry heat in the oven or on a rotating spit. And our next slide we're going to go to will be our spit roasting as well. Okay? Moisture is provided by the addition of fat or oil, which is generally basted over the food as well. Does roasting have a temperature? What is it? 180? Can we roast at 160? Can we roast at 140? Yeah. So it doesn't actually have a defined temperature in terms of that as well. So when you're answering that question, roasting can just be with the addition of fat, generally done in the oven, or spit roasting. Who's had spit roast before? Yeah? What have you had on a spit roast? Pork. Yeah? Suckling pig? Yum. What else? Lamb. Who's had a kebab before? That's kind of like a little bit like a spit roasting, isn't it? You know, you've got that radiating heat going around as well, and it's just spinning. So spit roasting is also another form of dry methods of cookery where instead of putting it into the oven, the convection of the heat is radiated along as well. So what have we got? We've got roasting, we've got spit roasting, and then we have baking. Everyone's favorite. Yeah? Why is baking everyone's favorite? It makes you think about cakes, doesn't it? Pastries, cookies, okay? And the difference between roasting and baking is, of course, roasting has the addition of fat, whereas baking does not have the addition of fat. So what are some of the things we like to bake? What do we like to bake? Cookies. Brownies. Coconut ice. What about some pastries? What kind of pastries have you been making at school? Have you done sweet pastry? No? Choux pastry? Yeah? So what do we make from choux pastry? Profiteroles. And what's that big thing called that we make from croquembouche? Yes. What do we put inside profiteroles? A custard. Yes. Cream. Cream patisserie as well. Yeah? So we all like baking. We do a lot of baking here at William Blue. We make all our own pastries here, okay, from scratch. And we do a whole section on patisserie as well, where a lot of it is baking. However, an incorporation of baking also means incorporating lots of other methods of cookery as well, especially if we are adding a curd to something, if we're adding a cream to something, you know, if we're making a toffee for our croquembouche. There's lots of different methods of cookery attributed to baking as well. Any more dry methods of cookery? Pan frying, shallow frying are dry methods of cookery, even though we add oil, yes? We've also got grilling. Grilling's kind of a bit of a favourite of mine because I like that backyard grilling, yeah? I like my barbecue in terms of that. But we've got 3 different types of grilling, don't we? Can anyone name some? What's the most common grilling method? Barbecue. If we were going to transfer the barbecue into the kitchen, we wouldn't call it barbecue. What would we call it? Salamander is a form of grilling. But what's that one where it's done directly? Char grilling. Yes, char grilling. So we generally char grill what? Number 1 item we char grill is our steaks, yeah? Char grill, what else? Char grill capsicum, yes. So within grilling embedded is 3 different methods of cookery. So we have char grilling, we have what someone said over here before, the salamander. What's that called? Radiation, radiating heat, yes? Okay, and then we also have griddling. So griddling is where there is no open flame coming through the char grill bars. So we would do that on a griddle plate as well. And that's what is known as broiling. When you go to America, anyone been to America before? States? They have broiled steaks. They don't have grilled steaks. It sounds weird putting broiled in front of a steak for me, so I'm going to keep it to char grilled. And then we have our shallow frying as well. And again, within shallow frying, we have 3 different methods of cookery, don't we? What are they? We've got saute. And how do we define saute? Saute is fast. What are we trying to do when we're sauteing? Yeah, we're trying to get some color in there as well, okay? So what's the opposite of sauteing, but we're still shallow frying? Stir frying is another method of shallow frying. What's the one when it's very, very low? When we're trying to extract the moisture, make it a bit more palatable. Things like onions and garlic. Sweating, yes, we have sweating. So we had stir frying, which is over a high heat, done in a wok. Then we have sauteing, and then we have sweating. So slowly extracting moisture from products to increase flavour as well. And the things that we sweat are, of course, that garlic, that onion, those vegetables, okay, to really kind of impact that flavour going forward as well. Any other methods of cookery we can think of? Any? There's lots more out there. Anyone heard of confit? Yes? Confit duck? So what's confit? For a pair of William Blue sunglasses, what is confit? Cooked in fat. Yes, generally speaking, it's cooked in its own fat. Yeah, so when we were doing duck legs, we would salt our duck legs down for 24 hours so we can extract that fat that's in there a little bit quicker, and then we drop it into duck fat and we cook it slowly, you know, for about 2 or 3 hours as well. That's one, confit. Anything else? Sous vide, yeah, we do a lot of sous vide. What's sous vide? Who's heard of sous vide before? Yeah? Anyone give me, how do we sous vide? What was that? Put it into plastic and into boiling water? Pretty much, yeah. We generally put it into vacuum seal bags. We take the air out of the vacuum seal bags and then we'll put it into a water bath. Depending on what temperature that we want to do it at, it could be anywhere from 55 degrees up to 65 degrees or even higher if it was poultry or chicken as well. We do a lot of sous vide here in our circulator, and it kind of keeps it exactly where we want it. When we're doing things like pâtés and terrines, when we're doing like our parfaits, we'll actually cook it sous vide style because we know it's exact, as opposed to trying to put a probe or a thermometer into the oven and then guessing, you know what I mean, in terms of that. Because when you're cooking in the oven, a lot of the time, what's happening is that radiant heat's coming from the outside back in. So in the middle, it might be 65 degrees, but on the outside, it's probably going to be a little bit hotter as well, yeah? Any other methods of cookery? No? What about smoking? Is smoking a method of cookery? We can hot smoke, we can cold smoke. Anything else? I've run out of ideas. I'm sure the guys back live streaming are there tapping away with all their answers. So that's just a little kind of overview of methods of cookery and basic methods of cookery as well. We cover over a whole range of methods of cookery when we do it here at William Blue, but those are the basic ones that you're going to get to in your question and answer session for your exams as well. So, next one we're going to move to, team, is kitchen equipment. Mise en place. What does mise en place mean? Everything in its place. And it doesn't just relate to equipment, does it? What else does it relate to? Your food preparation as well. You know, before service at the restaurant, we're like, is everything ready? Have you got your utensils? Yes. Have you got your food preparation ready to go as well? Okay, so the French term mise en place means to have everything in its place, including equipment preparation. Okay, a lot of equipment requires certain procedures to prepare them for use. What kind of equipment could we be talking about? Utensils. Generally, when we talk about equipment, we're talking about small or large. And how do we define large equipment? Anything you can't put into your school bag and take home, yeah? So your ovens, your cool rooms, your Hobarts, anything that you can't carry is generally, or anything that's fixed is generally large equipment. Whereas small equipment could be what? Bowls, hand mixers. Well, now that you're going to be coming to William Blue, you are the hand mixer. We don't provide hand mixers. You are the whisks, yes? Well, we've got whisks. What else do we have? Measuring jugs, scales, yeah? It's a whole range of small and large equipment. And why do we have that? What's the use of small and large equipment? To expedite service, to make sure that we're doing the job correctly as well, okay? There's a big difference between what we use at home, domestic appliances, and then what we use in a commercial kitchen as well, okay? So, again, kitchen equipment is specifically designed to store, prepare, cook, clean, and serve food as well, to a commercial standard. Remember, you're going into commercial cookery, okay? It's not cooking for mum and dad at home or cooking for one or two. You're essentially cooking for anywhere, you know, above that 20 all the way up to 1,000, depending on if you're catering as well. So that's the word commercial, which is why the focus on hygiene this morning, the focus on safety, okay, and the introduction was so important as well, because we're actually cooking for the public, okay? Very, very important that we have our hygiene and we have our safety correct. The type of menu depends on the need of the establishments and the type of menu to be prepared for. Growing up as an apprentice chef or as a chef, a lot of the times I would see people who would design restaurants, okay? So they would have, you know, 100 square meters. They would try and fit 95 square meters for the restaurant because they could put more and more people in there, and then there'd be 5 square meters left for the kitchen, okay? And so they would hope they could do, you know, a menu of like 300 or 400 items, which is impossible, isn't it? When you've got a 5 meter square kitchen and you've got a 95 meter square restaurant, there's an imbalance there. And we're finding now that, you know, the smarter designers are the ones that are putting in the kitchen first, putting in the equipment first, and then designing around that as well, okay? That way, the equipment that's in there is actually catered for the actual restaurant itself. So, purchasing considerations that we should include. Well, obviously, number one is what? Price. You got to have a budget, okay? So, whatever your budget may be, it comes down to price. Next thing would be size, yeah? So how much room do you have to put in there as well? It's very important. The layout of the kitchen. We're going into a meeting next week to talk about a kitchen layout as well and the design. Okay, they'll give us a scope of what we're allowed to do, and then we'll start to look at what we can do within that space as well. The durability of the equipment is very, very important, okay? So am I buying something that's going to last for 5 years? Am I buying something that's going to last for 15 or 25 years as well? Okay, that's very, very important too. And that again will come down to price as well. The performance and the usefulness as well, okay? So if I had a fish and chip shop, I probably wouldn't need a sous vide machine, would I? But I would need what? Lots of deep fryers. Again, so you would, you know, put in that product depending on what it is that you require for, you know, your menu or for your restaurant catering operations as well. And then there's a little slide that tells us what, you know, correct equipment can achieve, okay? But the bottom one is the true one. It can achieve better results, all right? The right equipment in the right hands, used by the right skilled person, will achieve better results. We do a lot about sustainability here at William Blue as well. And we talk about the efficiencies of equipment and how it can reduce emissions, how it can save, you know, in terms of electricity, in terms of gas as well. And sustainability is, you know, is probably something that's coming up more and more, okay? And within restaurants and within kitchens, you know, we want to learn to be kind of greener, don't we? So the kitchen equipment that we use is very important as well. One of the other things it says there is it generates labour savings. How could equipment save you money on labour, on wages? Yeah, some equipment can actually replace a person. Give me an example of that. Dishwasher, still got to lift it up and pull it out, but yes, to a degree, a dishwasher will replace your chef de plonge. What else? Industrial mixers. Anyone heard of, yes, industrial mixers for sure. What about a Thermomix? Anyone heard of a Thermomix? Yeah? So a Thermomix can pretty much replace a chef, yeah? Because they can make creme brulees, they can do risottos, okay? So to a lot of degree, there is equipment out there that will make your life a lot easier, and it may save on having that extra chef, that extra apprentice, or potentially that extra kitchen hand in your kitchen as well. Because what is the number one cost when it comes to running a restaurant? Labour, yeah? It's true, labour is the number one cost. What's the number two cost? Produce, yeah, and overheads. It's generally a pretty much even split. When I started out, it was generally 25%, 25%, 25%. Nowadays, we're looking at labour being residually 35 to 40%. It's a really high rate. So if you can find equipment out there that's actually going to save you money, then obviously that's going to be a benefit in the long run, especially as you develop your careers and you get to that level of manager, head chef, exec chef, or even owner as well. You want to be able to save as much as possible. So correct equipment can achieve better results. And then we've got a little range of small equipment there. Can you identify all of that small equipment? What do we see there? Spoons, measuring spoons. Most of the students, when they start here and they say, 1 tablespoon or 1 teaspoon, they go to the cutlery drawer and just grab a tablespoon or a teaspoon. But that's not correct. We actually have what a tablespoon and what a teaspoon is, okay? Does anyone know what in grams a teaspoon should be? 5, it's a good guess. 15, a little bit lower. 10, Radek's saying 10. It's about 8 grams. What about a teaspoon? Teaspoon before? Yeah. So 7 grams. Tablespoon? 15, about 18 grams, yeah, as well. So that's quite specific, isn't it? Because, if you go and put, 25 grams in, then your recipes are got a bit of an imbalance as well. So we have our measuring spoons. Next to our measuring spoons we have measuring jug, very, very important. And then we have our measuring cups. What else? We've got our moulds. What do we use moulds for? To bake, to shape those cakes, to shape the cookies as well. We've got our small frying pans. We've got our large frying pans as well. And then what else have we got there? Mortar and pestle. I love mortar and pestle. Who uses a mortar and pestle? Yeah, what do you use a mortar and pestle for? Thai cooking, yeah? Yeah. Make those Nam Jim sauces, yeah, as well. A little bit more, we've got some baking pans, fry pans. Obviously, we've got some graters, some stock pots, thermometers and strainers. And then our large equipment team, that's everything, like I said, that you can't put on your back and carry out. So, combi steamers. Do you guys have combi steamers? What do you use your combi steamer for? Puddings? Everything? Yeah, pretty much. They're great, aren't they? Because we can do what in our combi steamers? We can roast, yeah? We can steam, we can bake. We can also add the addition of liquid, can't we? So we can put it up to 10% steam, 20% steam, 30% steam as well. I love our combi. We do a lot in our combi. Deep fryers. We always have a couple of deep fryers on hand. Dishwashers. Does anyone know what a brat pan is? You can do everything in a brat pan, but a really good definition of a brat pan is it's a really large frying pan, yeah? When I say really large, we're talking it's almost 2 meters by 2 meters. and it's got a little wheel that wheels it up, and you find them probably in large catering establishments, you'll find them in hospitals as well, where there's a lot of bulk cooking, where they're not cooking for 20 or 30 or 40 people, but where they're cooking for 200, 400, 500 and more as well. So over your course of your career, you will get to use a brat pan as well, and basically that's exactly what it is. It's a large frying pan. Cool rooms and freezers, we also classify as large equipment. And then we've got all the things that we know, our grills, our char grills, our ovens. What's a range? Ranges? That's where all the steam and all the dirt and all the grease gets sucked up, yeah, as well. So we've got our ranges, our stock pots, and our bain-maries. Bain-marie, what's a bain-marie? Water bath. Essentially, it's a water bath as well. So it keeps our food either cold or it keeps our food hot, because a bain-marie doesn't necessarily have to be hot, does it? It can be cold as well, all right? So now we get to the fun part. How do we clean our equipment? What do we have to use to clean equipment with? Detergent, yes, very important, yeah? Water and detergent. So we rinse that off, okay? Then we put it through the dishwasher, or we actually wash it ourselves by hand. But what's more effective, washing it by hand or putting it through the dishwasher? Both? Well, what's more hygienic? The dishwasher, because it actually gets to a certain temperature on a rinse cycle, okay? So it'll get to 82 degrees, which is what's needed to do what? Sterilize, kill bacteria, exactly, okay? So our dishwasher rinse cycle must get to 82 degrees so it can sterilize and it can kill bacteria. We also use sanitizers, okay? And what's the best way to dry equipment? Hand towel? Hand dry? Air dry. Because we don't know if we've got a tea towel or hand towel that we've used to wipe down a bench, it might contain bacteria and then we're transferring that back on again. So air drying is probably the most effective way to actually clean and maintain our kitchen equipment as well. Electrical equipment. So there's a couple of do's and don'ts when it comes to electrical equipment, which is pretty straightforward, yeah? What are they? Don't use near water. That's kind of basic 101, okay? All right, never put our hands close to live electricity or the moving parts of the unit, okay? Switch equipment off after use. Switch equipment off and remove power plugs prior to cleaning. And then do not use electrical equipment in wet areas, okay? Pretty straightforward. Do you guys use a lot of electrical equipment at school? Hand mixers, KitchenAids, yeah? We do as well. And we know that the kitchen is generally, can be quite a wet environment, okay, in terms of that. So it's very important that we, follow those basic safety rules that Jeannie probably went through with you as well. Number one piece of equipment in your kitchen is your knife, yeah? Or your knives as well, all right? Looking after your knives is very, very important, okay? I've got a massive knife kit, get lots of different knives. Does anyone know some of the names of knives? Paring knife. What do we do with our paring knife? We generally use it for smaller items, don't we? Yeah? And then what's our number one knife called? Chef's knife, okay? And there's a whole range of different knives out there for chef knife, depending on the size. Generally, I use a 26 centimeter just because my hands are a bit smaller. Other people like to use larger ones. What other type of knives do we have? A serrated knife. What do we use that for normally? Cutting bread. What was that? A turning knife. Yes. What do we use a turning knife for? Turning vegetables, yeah? What else? Boning knife? Paring knife? Meat knife? A meat cleaver, yes. So lots of different knives out there. Very important that we look after our knives because knives are very expensive, yeah? So, as a rule of thumb, we never put knives through the dishwasher, okay? Because what tends to happen is the heat tends to warp the knives and it actually doesn't sharpen them either, okay? So it blunts them, all right? So we don't put them into the dishwasher. We never leave knives in a sink. We've only lost, I think in 15 years, we've only lost about 5 fingers at William Blue, yeah? No, not true, not true. But one of the things that we always kind of reiterate, especially when, you know, students are starting, is don't go and throw your knives into a sink, okay? Because generally that's got hot soapy water in there. Someone goes in to wash it, obviously they can cut themselves. So that's our number one rule of thumb when we're looking after our knives. If you need to wash your knife, take your knife to the sink, wash it, wipe it, bring it back, okay? Another rule of thumb is don't walk like that with your knife, yeah? The amount of people I see walking like that, you know, so you just keep it down by your side, walk, because of course you don't want to hurt anyone else, all right? And then we like to put it into a protector or something called a knife box or a knife wrap as well, okay? So very important that we look after our knives. And then just to finish, guys, cleaning is everyone's responsibility, okay? One of my pet hates is when we've got, you know, 12 students and it comes to cleaning and then 3 of them go and disappear, yeah? I'm sure we've all experienced that before. Yes, a couple of the teachers are like, yep, I know those students. So we rotate everyone around. We make them clean the benches one week, they might clean, you know, the stovetops the next week, but everyone gets involved. So it's really, really important because, you know, many hands make light work. So that's kind of going to wrap it up. What we're going to do now, we've got about, I think, 10 to 15 minutes where we're going to take a little Q&A session. Okay, so do we have any questions coming through on Zeeting? No? I'm just too efficient. All right, so guys, now's your chance to ask me any questions about William Blue or anything about cookery in general as well. Pick my brain. Don't be shy. We have plenty of sunglasses. Anything about the program that we do here, William Blue? Richard, do you have a question? Okay. We have a question. Phoebe already has a pair of sunglasses. She's going for number 2.
It's just a question for you. So were you a chef before this? Before becoming like a teacher here?
A teacher?
Yep.
Yes. Yes. I've been cooking for, I've been in kitchen since I was 14, actually, because I went and did I was a kitchen hand, do you know what I mean? As I was going through school, just to earn some money. That's probably how I kind of fell in love with it. But I qualified in 1994, and I've been a chef all the way through. I've probably been teaching for 10 years, but at the same time, like all the lecturers here at William Blue, we also work out in industry just to stay current, you know? We find that there's nothing better than having someone who is actually working in industry and teaching at the same time, as opposed to maybe having not worked for 15 or 25 years as a chef and then trying to impart that knowledge. So I think it's really important that we stay current. We know what the current trends are, you know, where people are eating, you know, what good food is, and the same with our front of house and hotel managers as well. They do a lot of research. They go out and work in industry. Jackie Joseph has a question over there, and I think we have another one over here.
What is your favourite cuisine?
I've never had that question
Favourite
before.
cuisine?
I've never had that question. What's my favourite cuisine? Look, I've been really, really lucky. I've worked in lots of different style restaurants, and I've trained under some amazing chefs who have done not only Thai, Chinese, obviously we've done European food. I really like Italian. I like Italian because for me, it can be a little bit more lazier because I can just throw some stuff together, do you know what I mean? Like cheeses and tomatoes and throw some basil on there. So I like doing that at home. But I love all cuisines. Yeah, I probably couldn't answer just one. But good question, Jack. Another question over here.
Just with Sous Vide, how would you demonstrate that if you didn't actually have like a vacuum seal machine at school or in the industry?
Okay, great question. So how will we demonstrate Sous Vide if you actually didn't have a circulator. A couple of different ways, and that's kind of incorporating that basic methods of cookery as well. So if you've got a combi steamer in the kitchen, so drop it into water, set the temperature that you need, let's say it's 67, put a weight on there, and then that combi steamer should do it. The alternative is do it the old standard way. Drop a thermometer into a pot and then adjust the gas to where it gets to that 67 degrees. And we've done that before. Circulator's broken down, we've got to keep going. So we've either done it in the combi or we've done it in a pot as well. But it's a good way to demonstrate. As long as you've got a thermometer probe that's really accurate, you'll have no problems.
What was the hardest dishes that you've ever done?
What was the hardest dish I ever did? I think I had to try and emulate Peter Gilmore's snow egg. That was really hard. It took me like 15 hours to interpret it, and then probably 15 hours to still not get it quite right. So there's a lot of ingredients and a lot of methods of cookery associated with that as well. And yeah, that was probably one of the hardest. Got a question over here?
I was just going to ask, with the commercial cookery course, like comparing practical and theory, like how much work you do like per week and days you come in and stuff like that?
So how much practical and theory is there in combination? So obviously one of the key aspects of William Blue and the delivery of, whether it be the food and beverage side of it or the commercial cookery side, is that we showcase how to run a business as well. So there is embedded theory in terms of marketing, accounting 101, and of course you've got that practical operations side. So we try and stream it so that you've got kitchen operations where you'll use your basic methods of cookery, coming in with kitchen studies. So what you're learning practically, you're also learning theoretically, so you've got that underpinning knowledge. And they marriage all the way through hand in hand. So kitchen operations 1 to kitchen studies 1, kitchen operations 2 to kitchen studies 2, and then all the way through to kitchen operations 4. So depending on what term you're in, you'll do 10 hours practical for the first term, and then you're looking at 17 hours practical for the second, and then it goes back to that 10 hours again for the third. But there's always a lot of opportunities to come in and do like extra classes, if that makes sense. So you might want to do an extra class in the restaurant, so we'll let you come into the restaurant just so you can get that ingrained knowledge too. But yeah, really important that you're learning the practical as well as the underpinning theory side of it as you're going along. And what you're learning in practical is what you're studying in theory, so it makes sense and it ties in. We have an online question?
We have a question from our online chat. What are the latest trends in cooking? Are there any new techniques that you use at William Blue Dining?
Well, obviously we talked about sous vide and circulating as well. What other tips and trends are coming through? Well, I'm starting to see a lot of flowers, nasturtiums, when we're decorating. We've gone through our little foam, kind of era as well. Probably just lightening those dishes a little bit too. We've gone away from that, heavy-based sauces, to those lighter sauces as well. A little bit more delicate flavour. One of the things that's really coming throughout commercial cookery and actually throughout cookery is that paddock to the plate. We do a lot of work with our suppliers where what we want for our students is we want them to talk to the producers, the people who are actually making the olive oils, who are making the salts, who are rearing the animals, and they come in and they talk to them about that process. So we're trying to incorporate a lot of paddock to plate. We do a lot of excursions out to certain areas so that students actually really understand what the producers are trying to achieve. So that's probably one of the top things trending at the moment.
How many students are in the kitchen at any one time?
Depending on which kitchen it is. The question was how many students are in the kitchen at any one time. It depends on what kitchen. If it's William Blue Dining, we probably cap it at about 10 in terms of that. If it's our static kitchens, then we usually have up to 15 in there as well. Do you have a question? No?
Yes, there is another question. What has been your biggest challenge?
My biggest challenge? Well, interestingly, and you probably won't believe this because you know, I talk so well. My biggest challenge is always getting up in front of a massive group and talking as well. I'm usually, you know, a little bit nervous in terms of that. But yeah, I remember once I used to work for an external company, and I had to talk to 5,000 people on stage, and it was almost the first time that I'd actually spoken. I nearly broke down, you know, I was like shaking like a leaf as well. So that can be a really big challenge, you know, as well. Obviously, we work in an environment where it can be quite stressful. Restaurants, kitchens, you know, they are quite stressful. They're challenging, they're time poor. Okay, so there's challenges everywhere, but I think because I enjoy the job so much, I really love what I do, and I know that you'll probably hear that from a lot of people, but it's really true. I would never recommend anyone going into commercial cookery unless you really enjoyed that, because there are challenges all along the way, and very demanding, quite stressful in a lot of ways too. So biggest challenges, yeah, definitely getting up on stage and talking to 5,000 people. That was a massive challenge. No more questions. Jackie?
Do you find that chefs, when they work in industry, it's a really stressful work life when it's at home, they don't do that much because they do all the time for work.
Okay, so the question is, if you're working in the industry as a chef, do you find that you're less likely to cook at home?
No, because my wife doesn't cook, so I would starve. Literally, she doesn't cook. I think we've been together 15 years. She's cooked me 6 meals. So I love cooking, like I really do. And probably it's a great question, because you know you get home from doing a shift, and you know, you probably last thing you want to do is cook. But if I'm away, you know, for a day or 2 days, like I really like jumping back in the kitchen. You know, I don't necessarily like cooking for myself, and I think that that's the great thing about being a chef. Like, you've got a very giving nature. You like to cook for other people because you want to please them as well. So if I've got friends and family coming over, I'll always do the cooking, and I'm happy to do the cooking as well. That, and also my wife doesn't cook, so yeah.
We have one more question
We have
on
one
our
more,
online chat.
and then I think India's got a question as well.
If you could only eat one more time, what would you choose for your last meal?
Wow. There's actually, interestingly, there's a cookbook out there, and it's done by chefs, and that's actually what the concept is. What would your last meal be? And so these amazing chefs all around the world, you know, local chefs like Neil Perry, Tetsuya, what would your last meal be? And then they try to recount what they would like. And sometimes it's just the simplest things. You know, it could be mum's lamb roast on a Sunday, okay? But what would mine be? I'm gonna have to say dumplings. I love dumplings. I do. Din Tai Fung. Oh, I love them, yeah. So at the moment, I'm going through a bit of a dumpling craze. So I'm gonna go with dumplings, Richard.
What's your favourite ingredient to cook with?
Favorite ingredient? Do you know what I find changes everything? Used well, doesn't matter if it's in salads, doesn't matter if it's in braises or stews, herbs. You know, like a nice soft herb in a salad, whether it be mint or coriander, or if it's that rosemary going into a braise. I think of myself as a bit of a green thumb. I'm probably not, but I do grow a lot of herbs at home. And I love going out and just snipping, whether it's the rocket or the thyme or the rosemary or the basil, and throwing it through. Like, I find that changes up everything. That and fennel. I've got a bit of a fennel fixation at the moment as well. No more questions? Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming along. Thank you, everyone watching on live stream. It's been an absolute pleasure. Good luck on all your exams as well. I think there's a massive thank you for Radek, Jeannie, and Jackie for today as well. And a massive thanks for Paul Pixley for putting this together, guys. So, well done. Good luck, and I guess we'll see you all next year at William Blue in the kitchen. Thank you.